Welcome to the Tourism Hub podcast, a podcast devoted to you and your excellence, providing inspiration and education for the entrepreneurs, experience makers and excellence seekers of our industry to take your tourism business and career to a whole new level. I'm your host, Despina Karatius.
Relax.
Very excited to have such a special guest with me today, sitting opposite in the very heart of Melbourne City. I've got Adrian Byrt, the superstar behind the state's most amazing conferences and events at the Victoria Tourism Industry Council, and he's got such a remarkable journey and story to share, and I welcome you to the Tourism Hub.
Thank you, Despina. A pleasure to be here. Very kind words. I appreciate it very much. No, it's nice to be here. You can't escape the buzz when you come into the centre of Melbourne and you're surrounded by people from all walks of life and I suppose all corners of the globe as well. So it's hard not to be caught up in the tourism industry down here, that's for sure.
Love it. Speaking of the tourism industry, how did you get started in working in tourism and events? You've got two kind of defined hats that you wear and do such an incredible job at gelling the both. How did this journey start for you?
I think, Despi, they're not mutually exclusive, tourism and events, and I think the broader terminology now of the visitor economy certainly expands that even further. So there's a lot more industries that haven't been traditionally classified as tourism that are now becoming increasingly relevant. But I guess to answer your question, I was lucky enough to move over to Europe when I was very young, following a different pathway altogether, and I lived in Sweden when I was about 15. And the intention was for me not to come back if I was successful at what I'd been sent over there for. Unfortunately, I did have an injury, but while I was over in Sweden, I was based there in a lovely town called Norrköping. If you ever get the chance to go, it's absolutely beautiful. But whilst I was there, I was lucky enough to travel to a bunch of European countries, albeit for maybe only a week at a time, to experience what I was there for. And I noticed the joy that I felt at seeing different destinations, different cultures, different people, experiencing their way of life, their cuisine, the music, the language, and it all just really felt comfortable and natural to me. And so when I came home back to Australia and finished my studies in Adelaide, don't hold that against me, but I finished my studies in Adelaide, and like most people do, I moved away as soon as I'd done my uni and lived in places such as the Blue Mountains and Kakadu, Whitsundays, Port Douglas, and it just continued that experience of, I guess, new experiences. And from being on the visitor side of it, I knew that I wanted to be on the supply side. I wanted to be part of the team or part of the industry that delivered the magical experiences that I'd felt. And even if it didn't apply to everybody, I knew it would apply to enough people to make it worthwhile.
I'm curious, what were you sent over for?
Bad behaviour. No, I was lucky enough to be able to swing a tennis racket fairly well, and so I went over, played tennis, studied at the same time, although study took very much a back seat. And yeah, so it was almost 30 years ago now, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but no, it was fun at the time.
Not embarrassing at all. I love that. What a cool story. So your first job in tourism, so when you made that decision and you finished your studies back in Adelaide, what was your first stepping stone into the industry?
The first one, believe it or not, was in the hospitality space, and it was running a restaurant called The Escarpment, restaurant in the Kakadu Crocodile Hotel. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's shaped like a crocodile. If you Google Kakadu Crocodile Hotel, or Gagaju, which is the local indigenous tribe in Kakadu, you'll notice that there is a hotel that's shaped like a crocodile, and good Lord, we had some experiences. Given the weather conditions in Kakadu, there are often times during the wet season where our guests were reined in, and we ended up having to serve the same people for extended periods of time with limited resources. And it was a great learning experience, but I think that was where there was a lot more learning than in the tourism and hospitality space. There was a lot of life learning there also. You needed to I guess, be a lot more resourceful with what you did, not only with your resources but with your time. And yeah, that was the first real one, and I think it just secured the passion for me and just went on from there.
And fast forwarding to who currently, and at the time of this recording, in an exciting transition phase. So your big why in choosing VTIC a few years ago now, in choosing VTIC, I guess at the present, your big why and your way forward from here.
Sure, I think the big why, I've got a bit of a thing, and I'll call it a thing because I don't know how else to explain it, but perhaps it's a fear of not leaving a legacy. And I'm not a magnificent athlete, I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician, although I try to be. And one of the things that appealed to me so much about VTIC was the opportunity to impact and assist people's businesses. And for those who know a little bit about VTIC, we're around about 1,100 members strong, and the majority of those members are small businesses. So the help and the time we spend with those small businesses, the resources that we provide for them, the training, the events, the networking, the things that they couldn't possibly do by themselves are what keeps me going. So it is that opportunity to impact, in a positive sense, people's businesses, and for those people that are in small business, that's impacting their livelihood. And I find that really rewarding. It's a challenge sometimes in the not-for-profit space. Make no secret about that, and anyone will tell you, because there is a lot of, red tape, a lot of steps you have to go through to achieve that goal. But when we deliver something like the tourism conference, or even just a networking event, or drop in to mum and dad operations somewhere in, Echuca, sit down for 45 minutes, have a coffee, and leave with that person feeling better about their business, with a smile on their face, just because you've listened or imparted one or two pieces of assistance, then that makes it all worth it for me.
I love that, and I have to say, you think you're not an artist. I've watched Adrian just deliver massive conferences with just the ease, just like the tennis players make it look easy when they're on the court and you don't realise the hard work that goes into it. I think you're exceptional at the way that you can put these together and be so calm and cool and collected, and I think that's artistry. So with VTIC, and I guess over the span of your career, if you take us to a time where it wasn't, I guess, a challenging time, where, call it failure, call it a learning curve, call it a turning point that changed the course of your career and your direction. Is there something that comes to mind in the pathway of AB?
There definitely is, Despy. I think there's sort of two stages to that question, and both, I guess, experiences or incidents are separated by a few years. The biggest challenge or the failure, and it essentially was in a role that I had previous to joining VTIC with a company that specialised in sports travel. I was lucky enough to host the majority of the tours that we took our valued guests on, and one of those tours was to the 2010 FIFA World Cup finals in South Africa. We were over there for approximately a month, myself, one of the directors of the company, hosting the tour of 153 people. I hadn't attended South African site inspections, I hadn't seen all the properties, and I'd relied on feedback from one or two other people within the business who had been there. And unfortunately, halfway through the tour, and you can imagine those tours are quite tiring, you're up and about. We had 7 days in Cape Town, 7 days in Durban, a few days in Kruger, and some days outside Johannesburg, so everyone was pretty exhausted, and we rolled into I guess you'd call it a game reserve at about midnight one night. No one could find it, the bus drivers couldn't find it. We were on dust roads, the temperature was about -2. We rolled into the place, and only to find that the accommodation was actually shared. So people that didn't or only knew each other by virtue of being on the tour actually were forced to share accommodation. And you can imagine when they're tired, dusty, freezing cold, water in the pipes is frozen so they can't get a hot shower. There's no food available and the bar's shut. It was not a pleasant place to be. It got to the point where we were getting threatened with physical violence, and we just had to stand up and say, listen, we'll cop it, but we're not going to do it now. 8 o'clock in the morning, have a sleep, come back, and let's deal with it then. Some people did still have a crack at 8 o'clock the next morning, but I think the majority had stepped back and realised through getting to know us for the first couple of weeks that, it wouldn't have been something we did intentionally, and we just had to mend those bridges, I suppose. So that was the learning out of that one, was simply to ensure that you double, triple check everything, and it can't happen every time. It can't, and that's human nature. But when it's such an important experience, and again, it's taking a step back and putting yourself in the shoes of the visitor and making sure that everything you would expect you are providing. And that's what we hadn't done in that case. As far as the biggest turnaround learning, as you know, I was lucky enough to experience a course called Melbourne Tourism Industry Leadership Program, which I think has dropped the industry now. I think it's just called Melbourne Tourism Leadership Program. Fantastic, literally life-changing experience over the year of 2015, I think I did it. But one of the exercises we did, and it was very confronting, was where we tried to establish our values or realign our values or actually recognise them. And what I found was that at the age of 40, through this challenging exercise, I was actually living the values of my parents. And there's nothing wrong with that. But unless you make a conscious decision to look at your values, then I don't believe, anyway, it's my opinion, that you'll never actually be comfortable and confident 100% in your decisions and be able to stand beside them with all the conviction that you need to. That exercise, and I did it with a now good friend, Andrew Wilson, but we went through it as partners, and it was, as I said, very confrontational, but by the time we'd whittled it down to the 6 values that I held closest to my heart and to my head, they were quite different from the ones that I had originally chosen. And that was when I realised, and there's nothing wrong with it, with having the values of your parents, where else are you going to get them from? But at some point you need to have your own. And so now I have them, and what that's allowed me to do, and this would have definitely assisted back in 2010, I now make decisions based on those values that I know are true to me. So whether they're right, wrong or indifferent, I can sleep at night. And that's no problem. If you fail, but you've done it with all the best intentions and what's right for you, and let's face it, it's not right for everybody. Your definition of honesty, Despy, could be different to mine. And that's just the world. But if it's comfortable for you and you're genuine, then you can't fail in what I believe now is the truest sense of the word.
I love that. And it's so important. And I love that you've said that as your aha moment, because we speak of values for our businesses and the corporate values, but we kind of neglect our personal values because it's such a good barometer when you're making those key decisions. It just helps. It makes things very clear. There's no procrastinating when you go, well, is this aligned with my values? Boom.
That's exactly right, Despy. Corporate core values are a really interesting one for me since having done that. You can respect the corporate core values of a company, but a company should never try and force them onto a person to impact their behaviour. You can't live 2 sets of values. So you turn up as yourself, and it's important to turn up as yourself. And if that allows you to fit into a company structure, then that's fine. Provided you don't act negatively or totally disregard the company values, then I think by sticking with yours, you can be fine. Because collaboration is not about everyone doing the same thing. It's about everyone going towards the same goal. You just do it a little bit differently sometimes.
Right on, high five to that. Totally agree. So we've got the VTIC, Victoria Tourism Industry Council. I'm not sure if we abbreviated VTIC for those that don't know VTIC, and we love our acronyms. Now, I've mentioned, I love the way you roll when you could see Adrian working the lights, working the sound, doing the emceeing, and monitoring the speakers' presentations all at the same time, and he does it so awesomely. I just wanted to tap into some of the gold of just your strategies in being able to manage nerves when it comes to show day and everything being on your plate and on your, as the conference manager and organizer, to keep all the stakeholders happy and all the other little bits rolling. Anything you'd like to share with us?
That's a big question, but I'll try my best. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier about turning up as you, and you'll be found out one way or the other whether you're good enough or whether you're not, or whether you're appropriate or whether you're not. A lot of people who know me will know that I write things exactly the same as I speak them, And that's not always what people want to read. But for me, that's always how you're going to get it. And that applies to exactly how I look after conferences. You set your theme, and we'll get to that in a little minute, but you set your theme, you grab your values, you package them together, and then you go out and start looking for people. And it's literally a matter of asking them to deliver what you expect of them, managing their expectations as aligned with yours, and then turning up as yourself all the way through the process. And I know it's an old saying, but eating that elephant one chunk at a time. You know you need speakers, you know you need catering, you know you need AV, you know you need entertainment, you know you need networking, all those sorts of things. So the best way I can put it is picture yourself putting on a party at home, a dinner party at that. Let's make it for 12, let's make it for 10 people. Putting on a dinner party for 10 people, all of those elements need to apply, maybe minus the guest speakers. But if you can get all of those 100% right, and again put yourself in the shoes and the minds of the people that will be coming to see you, or in this case to come to the conference, then multiply that or duplicate that by 40 and you've got 400, because the majority of things are just a matter of scale. They're no more complicated. It's just a matter of making it a little bit bigger. Okay, naming lists and seating lists, okay, they're a little bit more complicated when the numbers get bigger, but AV's not. Catering's not. It's just scale. So the difficulty, the most difficulty with organising a conference, in my opinion, is literally ensuring that the speakers you get align with the theme you've developed, which matches the expectations that you have on yourself as far as delivering to your audience. And if those three things align, and I know I'm saying align a lot, but sorry, I'll come up with another word. But if those three things all match up, then I believe you'll have a successful event. With regards to confidence in maybe standing up and speaking or hosting certain things, I feel like everyone's got it. They just don't necessarily tap in. We've all got untapped potential, and what is best to understand is that the majority of people are nervous every time they step behind a microphone. I still get nervous. I'm more nervous talking to 20 people than I am to 2,000, but there's always that element of nerves, because you know, and I guess this is a good way to be nervous. You're not nervous about how you look or how you sound. You're nervous about delivering value to the people listening to you. And if that's why you're nervous, and again, it comes back to being, nervous for the right reasons, then I don't think if you make a mistake, anyone is going to have any negative responses to you. I like a little bit of self-deprecation. That's just my style, and that tends to always work. And again, turning up as you, not trying to be funny, not trying to be a comedian. You don't have to be. Just be you and be exactly who your values tell you that you are. And I don't think you can fail. You might not always do a great job, but the consistency over time will be there, and that's what you'll be remembered for, is that he always delivered. Some were better than others, but none were bad.
I really, really love what you said about being nervous because you're up there saying, I hope I can deliver the most value, that this will resonate and people can take something away from here.
I think one of the biggest things about event managers, Despy, and certainly not those that I work closely with, but I've experienced them. I started event management for a company based in Port Douglas, which was a national company where we delivered a lot of incentive programs throughout Australia and overseas, and I was lucky enough to deliver the galas. We used to do 3 or 4 galas night after night per program, and so you got to know a lot of people around the country and the world who run events, and what I found was that the best ones were in it for the clients. The ones that weren't so good wanted the spotlight. I like being in the shadows. I'm happy to sit at the AV desk for 2 days and never be seen, provided that the people that are seen are doing what they need to do. On the rare occasions where I do have to be seen and I'm up on the microphone, again, it's not about me. It's about making the people that do appear in the best light and facilitate their delivery so that it matches what the intention of the conference or the event is. And so, I think if people can remember that, if people can always remember to put the client or the visitor first, then the accolades will come. And, I love this saying that public adulation comes from private toil. So what you do behind the scenes, eventually you'll just be walking down the street and someone will come up to you totally unrelated, or not unrelated, but later on say, I saw you at that event, great job. And that's all you need. You know, the paycheck comes, that's cool. Travel comes, that's cool. But it's more about people tapping you on the bum and saying, well done. And then, that's what's rewarding.
So true. Now, you've been writing, and I've been loving reading your blogs, and you totally write as you speak, and that's what I've really loved even more about them. It's like Adrian speaking to you. Have you been writing prior to this? I haven't seen you blog before seeing the work that you've been doing, so that's two questions to that. I just love seeing someone in the industry actually pen some pieces of work about their thoughts and where inspiration come from. And then we can talk about the theme that you chose for this year's conference. And I loved that piece in particular. So you can tell us a little bit more about that. One, your experience with blogging and how you felt about it, and the theme around this year's conference.
Sure. I think with regards to the blogging, no, I haven't got experience. This is really where it starts. We've engaged other people to do it in the past. What I've always liked writing, but it's mainly letters or cards to my wife or all those sorts of things. And I love thinking about what you write so the person who's reading it gets the best experience. And whether that's a Valentine's Day card to Jodie, my wife, a birthday card to my daughter, or a blog for the conference, it doesn't matter. But to that, what I found was that, in my opinion, tourism sometimes took itself a little bit too seriously, and it tried to sanitize what is most important in the industry, and that's the people and the characters. And so I've decided that by writing these blogs ourselves and by making them not cheeky, but just, and maybe not even irreverent, but just not totally clean, not totally sanitized, and more to the majority of our audience, where they might have a little chuckle, they might have a laugh, or they might have their own aha moment that will entice them at the end of the day to come to the event and experience it. So I've enjoyed writing them. The last one I think was released a couple of weeks ago now, and you know the responses have been really good, and so far people have appreciated the fact that we're speaking to them as fellow operators, not as, I guess, from our ivory tower, so to speak. And I'm not suggesting that was the case in the past, but I certainly can tell you that the feedback has been a lot better. So I'm enjoying it, and I think it'll be something that no matter where I work from now on, I'll continue to do, and maybe even delve into a little bit of the private blogging as well. Again, it's not about what I'm doing. It's about adding value to anyone who reads it. And no matter what you do, whether it's a Facebook post, whether it's a tweet, whether it's a blog, if you can read it before you hit send or before you hit post and genuinely say, I believe someone will get something out of this, hit post. If you read it and you can't genuinely say that, or you read it and say, this is going to make me look good, pull back, don't hit post yet, and just do it again. Or amend it, change it a little bit, so that it's not so gratifying for you, because the gratification, as I keep saying, will come later on.
This is why I love the face-to-face. I can give him a high five for that, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're speaking, whether you're blogging, whether you're doing your social media post, givers gain. It's all about value. More about we, less about me. I love that, Adrian. It's right on. Please continue to blog. Whatever happens, let this conference be out of the way. It's you've got some. You're on a really good groove train and got momentum. I would love to continue to read your insights. So when relationship manager, okay, you manage relationships with many different people, many different personalities. I had a little, I guess I had the privilege and honour to come inside the Vic Chamber and experience such a dynamic team and diverse departments. It was something, as someone that's always come from small, micro level, small business, it really opened up my eyes to the industry, to a bird's eye view of the industry, and also gain a lot more respect for this team outputs in the work, but certainly from managing these relationships from government to your key stakeholders, to sponsors, to speakers. I can see intuitively that is something that you're gifted with in managing these things. Our industry, the foundation, would you agree, I think, is relationships, is having those core relationships within our networks. It's in terms of how you've traversed this role to have win-win outcomes with your key stakeholders. If you can share some insights around that.
Absolutely. I think the number one word, especially for those coming into the industry, is consistency. If you turn up as a different person, people always say, okay, a lot of people say that, you act differently in a boardroom as compared to a bar, or you should present differently to a CEO than you should to the handyman or the cleaner or whoever. I believe that's all rubbish. I think that if you are consistent in your behaviour and your level of respect and, abide by certain things, Mum used to say it all the time, we've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that ratio. So only 20% of the time you're talking, the other 80% you're watching. Yeah, that's right. The other 80% you're watching or listening. Those who know me really well might find that a little bit hard to believe, but it is actually true if you watch me closely. But I think if you're consistent in your behaviour and your attitude, that puts you on the right track to start with. Once you've got that consistency sorted out and you've aligned it with your values, then you can start looking at the people you're speaking to, research them, and remember that what you see, hopefully, is their consistent behaviour too. Because there's nothing worse than being found out when you behave one way professionally and then someone sees you at a private function or out on the weekend and you're a totally different person. It doesn't apply to you, it applies to everybody. And so what I've found is that if you treat everyone with the same level of respect, research them, their achievements, what they're doing now, why they're doing what they're doing now, then every time you have an interaction with them, you'll be able to take value from it. And I know I've mentioned a lot about only doing things that are going to add value to other people's experiences, but when you're building your network and working in relationships, not every situation is going to be one that you necessarily want to be in. And so what I've found as a really good habit is before you step into that situation, because we all know it before we do it, we get a gut feel or, we get maybe even an alarm bell in our head. One of the best things you can do is take a step back and think for 5 seconds, how do I ensure that I get the best result from this situation for me? And when I say for me, that can be for you personally or for your business or for your company. But at the end of the day, it changes your mindset just enough to ensure that the interaction goes in a positive way, no matter what. It doesn't always end up win-win, but it never ends up lose-lose. And so I think that's really good advice. I was given that advice, and I think it's worked for me. With regards to the various relationships that we have at VTIC, our team is unbelievable. We've got 7 or 8 of us. We do a mountain of work. We represent a huge industry, which is getting bigger all the time. More jobs, more revenue, more visitors, more income, which makes it more complicated too. So I think our entire team are masters of relationship management. We all do it differently, and that's the beauty of it. But provided that, and this is going to a company level now, provided the company is on the same track, then all of those relationships will be genuine, legitimate, and beneficial. And if everyone knows where you stand, they'll come to you knowing what to expect.
What are 3 reasons why every tourism event, visitor experience maker in Victoria and beyond should come and experience this conference in 2017? And the dates in 20, you can 24th of July, you can confirm that. So why should everybody that's vested or wants to get into or wants to learn more, wants to be inspired, why should they come?
24th and 25th of July this year, Desby at Flemington Racecourse, which is going to be an amazing venue. We're out there this week just having a chat, organising some more things that's going to be brilliant. The 3 main reasons for me, and I'll keep it as simple as possible, the network. The industry is built on the network. I said it before, it's built on the people. The people provide the products, but they're also partially the product themselves, especially in the smaller businesses. So the more you can learn from people in your industry, the better. We'll learn things during this conference that can improve people's business and don't require a mega budget. That's really important. It's a broad audience, a really diverse audience that attends this event. So a lot of our information does need to be high level, but at the same time, we need to be able to deliver takeaways or outcomes for smaller, medium and large businesses that don't require massive budgets to incorporate an improvement or a change in style or something that just keeps them fresh. And that leads to the third one. Times are changing. I mean, they are really changing, and it's time to keep up or be left behind. There's a lot of talk, social media, digital media, yes. The combination, though, is so vital of the face-to-face along with that. So how do you marry the two together? You know, we've got a session on driverless cars. I have arguments with people about this all the time because I don't think they're as close as they actually are. I've been told differently, and we've got an expert to come in and prove it. How's that going to change? What's that going to do for car parks, for property footprints, for ride sharing, for tour guides, for all the amount of new information? We've got the guys from Facebook coming down to tell us how that's all going to look in the future. Start thinking videos for everything. It doesn't have to be professional, it doesn't have to be amazing like your production's Despy. It just has to be there. There's a lot of information about the new. We're also introduced to some new people as well, some key leaders in our industry here in Victoria. A new General Manager of Consumer Affairs for Visit Victoria is coming down. First time we'll get to meet her, and a bunch of other new people. So those three things, I think, the networking, learn the things that you can do that don't require huge amounts of cash or capital, and the fact that times are changing and we're going to try and help you keep up with them.
And so aligned with lights, camera, action, with the theme. And action is the key word there, isn't it? Take action by actually taking yourselves out of your business, out of your day-to-day, and show up to... It's a one-time a year event. It's like the gym. You never regret a workout. You never regret a VTIC conference or any type of event that's going to enhance your professional growth and your learning. So 24th, 25th of July at Flemington Race Course. Now I have a little excellence round. Okay, so in the beginning, launching your career, what would you say was holding you back?
Confidence. It was not thinking I was appropriately, I had the appropriate knowledge to deliver value, until I realised that it was not what I was learning from the outside, but what was coming from the inside that was going to be of more value to anything else.
The best advice you've ever received, and by who?
I think the best advice I've ever received, and it's almost a saying, but it's not quite, or I take it as advice, is what I said before, is that your public success will be built from your private hard work. And I don't know if you've ever saw on my desk, there's a little note sitting under my screen that basically says, set your goals, stay quiet about them, smash the something out of them, and celebrate to yourself. That's really important to me. So I know I'm pretty out there and a loud person, but internally, and again, those who know me understand that I'd rather have that private success and celebrate it with a small group of people than a massive amount of success with a big party.
I've got my hands full, but that will be my quotable by Adrian Byrt. That was awesome. I'll have to write that down afterwards. So a personal habit. Now I think you've got a lot of them. Share one personal habit that you find you are committed and consistent with that contributes to your day-to-day success.
Consistency is one. And I mentioned it before, walking into every situation thinking, how can I make this the best experience it can possibly be? And the best way to equate that for anyone if they're struggling with what I mean is team meetings, board meetings, those sorts of things which you know are coming. Not everyone looks forward to them every day, but go into them thinking, how am I going to get the best out of it? And it does change your mindset. It legitimately does. It's good.
I really like that. It's not just about giving value. How will I gain value from this? Oh, hey, B, so good. An internet resource, something by way of an app or a website or something that helps, that's really helped your productivity or whatever it might be that our listeners might learn something new that can help them. Do you have anything like that?
I actually do, and it's funny. It is Evernote. I really like it. I got introduced to it about 2 years ago, and I'll admit that I was up and down with it to start with, because it is one of those things, I guess, like your brain, that until you really look at how much you can utilise it, you're not going to get the best out of it. I certainly don't get the best out of my brain. I certainly don't get the best out of Evernote, but they're both helping. And also with Evernote, for those of you who know it, there is the element of ticking things off, getting things done, wiping things away, which gives that little dopamine hit, which leads you to the next time and the next time and the next time. And it's like that one good golf shot that keeps you going and keeps you coming back, regardless of what happens to the other couple of hundred that you hit. But yeah.
Evernote. Love it. I'll add that into the notes. It's a parting piece and a guidance for our fellow tourism experience makers. Adrian?
I think initially just break everything down. It's not that complicated. That's not to say it's easy. It just doesn't have to be complicated, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a couple of really good elements to that. If someone's doing something brilliantly, there's nothing wrong with looking at what they do and taking as much of it as you can and reusing it or repackaging it or reshaping it. Do what you do and do it exceptionally well before you decide to branch out and try and be everything to everybody. Share your knowledge, because what you give back is as valuable as what you take. And put yourself in the visitor's shoes, which I've said a lot of times. But too many decisions in our industry, in big and small businesses, are based on the opinions, the desires and the expectations of those delivering the product, rather than the expectations and the desires of those who are going to pay the big dollars to come and experience them.
AB, where can we contact and stay in touch with you on socials? Where can we follow you and your journey?
Cool. Well, LinkedIn, obviously, just my name, Adrian Byrt. Facebook, the same. And Twitter, which is AB036. I'm not on Twitter as much. I will be very shortly, back on there fairly significantly. But yeah, you'll see a lot of, I guess, the new chapter and what's going to be happening. Hopefully be pretty exciting.
Great. We might have to do a part 2 when you get into your groove. And the conference, to read more of those great blogs and to find more information to book for the Vic Tourism Conference, where can people go to?
Yep, it's literally, website is victourismconference.com.au, or you can just search on the VTIC website, which is vtic.com.au. There's a direct link there. You'll see all the speakers. We've got almost 30 on the books for the event. The program, all the trade partners. There'll be a brilliant amount of people to network with, who will be having trade stands where they'll offer advice to improve your business, or just to start your network if you're new in the industry.
Finish us off on a high. A favourite quote of all time?
Okay, this won't come as a surprise to those who know me, but Michael Jordan, still the greatest basketballer of all time. I don't care what people say about LeBron James. But MJ had a bunch of quotes, and one of them was, never say never, because limits, like fears, are often just an illusion. And what I take out of that is that we build up a lot of things in our head, or we allow other people to build things up in our head that set ceilings, that put walls up, that put obstacles up. You look at an obstacle, your first instinct is often to turn away and walk in the opposite direction. But I think as you mature and as you have experiences and as you learn from other people, your first instinct should be, how do I get over, around or through it? And do I do it by myself or do I need help? Limits, there are some, of course, physical ones, but overall, I think that the majority of the boundaries we put up ourselves. And if we can start to learn to break them down mentally, we'll have a lot more success and overall a more wholesome and fulfilled life. And that's certainly what I'm trying to do. And by no means am I there yet, but every day you get a little bit closer. And that's my favourite saying of all time.
Thank you so much for doing this, Adrian. I hope you guys love that as much as I did as we sign off. Thank you. And I hope to see many of you at the Vic Tourism Conference 17. Thank you, AB.
Thanks, Desi. It's been a pleasure to hang out.
Relax.